listeners, to Matt Goes to the Movies. Thank you so much for joining us today, as once again, we are getting ready to tackle the multiverse, and today's episode features Spider-Man 2. And just like I said the first time, because this project is so big and just almost overwhelming, so to speak, with everything that we're going to cover, I just couldn't do it without some help. Listeners, you know him very well. Rob, welcome back to talk about Spider-Man 2.
Thanks. Had a lot of fun talking about the first one. It was a great time revisiting a movie that hadn't had a chance to watch in a while, and I've seen this one definitely less time, so I didn't have like a great memory of it. I remember enjoying it, but I remember there being parts of it that I disliked pretty strongly compared to the original. So I was really excited to. I actually just finished watching it about 20 minutes before we went on air. I was really excited to sit down and have an excuse to go back and see how I look at it years after the last time I've seen it.
Yeah, it's funny as we get into the episode further and further. This is widely considered by many people that you talk to, or like message boards or just seeing ratings. This is almost considered the best Spider-Man movie that has been made. So I'm going to be interested to hear your thoughts on this based on what you just said, and definitely. I have some different opinions about this movie than what I first had. So, going back through and rewatching these, so far the first two has been insanely interesting. And just like the last time before, Rob, we really get into this, I asked a couple of questions on social media, and I said, does Spider-Man 2 still hold up? I think it's a pretty fairly easy question. This movie is over, 15 years old. And at Westward Media 1217 said, easily my absolute favorite Spider-Man movie. I tear up at the train scene. At movies _sports _ADRXD simply said, yes, very simple. But then I asked a couple more questions about, is Dr. Octopus a better villain than Green Goblin? At Westward Media says, more developed and full circle. And the other question is Harry Osborn, based on what we saw here, the best developed character? And at movies _sports said, he is and isn't. Spider-Man 3 ruins it. So that'll be really cool to get to Spider-Man 3 and see what people think. But just wanted to take a quick second out to, mention listeners on the air that have supported the show and interacted with it. So thank you very much for that feedback on what you thought. So, Rob, what we're going to do is let's give a quick recap here. Spoiler free. We don't want to get into anything like that yet, but you mentioned it. What is your overview on Spider-Man 2?
The one thing that really stood out to me, and I was trying to remember this with my wife recently, if this was like the first movie she and I went to, like when we started dating. I was trying to remember if it was or it wasn't, but I know for a fact that we did go see this, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. I remember sitting in the theater, and I can distinctly remember being really bored by the middle section of this movie. It's kind of you don't see a lot of that kind of story being told in comic book movies and superhero movies and TV shows and things like that. And I remember just being like, all right, get on with this already. But I remember the other things I remembered about this was how good I thought they did with Dr. Octopus. And I thought, look, if you're not going to cast Elton John as Doc Ock, like Alfred Molina, that's your guy. I mean, he was phenomenal with it. Obviously, I think Elton John's probably a little too old to play the character at the time they did this, but he's got the look. If you want comic accurate, that's your guy. But I really enjoyed what they did with it. I liked seeing a little bit more development of Peter Parker assuming the mantle of the protector of his city and what that means to him and the personal cost that it has to him. I thought that was really well done. And I remembered all of those things. So I was really excited to kind of revisit this. And a lot of that stuff still hits. I feel like a lot of the things that I was very critical of the first movie are sadly still present here. They didn't get fixed, unfortunately. However, there's a couple things, Matt, that you really pointed out in the first film that I think were really improved on in this film, particularly the action scenes that I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit. But it was better than I remembered it, and I was glad that I got a chance to sit down and actually it was the first time my son had ever seen this movie. So we're going to watch all of these together. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's actually really, really cool. So, my thoughts on this are yes, I thought they definitely improved the action scenes in this movie. I thought Spider Man was more Spider Man. I really like the estranged relationship that Peter has with certain people in his life. But also, I think that it falls into some of the movie tropes that I really, really cannot stand, especially going back and watching this and just, again, as my viewpoints on film have changed over the years, I just particularly find myself finding that more and more in this movie. And it really does bug me based on time frame and the length of events that have occurred between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2. So, with that being said, Rob, let's piggyback off of how we feel about this movie with what we call here at Matt Goes to the Movies the watch rating. Now, the watch rating is a very simple scale. It's either low, medium, or high. Low's the movie's terrible. There's no reason to rewatch it. Medium, movie has a few redeeming qualities that pulls you back in for rewatches. And high, movie is good enough where you want to watch it multiple times on your own based on a variety of factors. Is the movie funny? Is it emotional? Great visuals, acting, anything that goes into filmmaking. So for me, this movie is up there. I'd actually say this movie is high on the rewatchability. I think there's some very, very good things with this movie that are not completely underscored by some of the things that I mentioned in the opening. There's still some flaws to it, but I do think that this movie still holds up incredibly well all these years later.
I think it's odd because I'm not sure if this is actually a better movie than the first one. It may be, it may not be. It might be slightly more rewatchable though. And I'm going to probably call this kind of low, high rewatchability. I had said the first one, which I actually like a little bit better, is probably a medium rewatchability for me. This one is probably a high rewatchability, but I kind of give that with a little bit of a caveat. It's got a high rewatchability if I have my remote in hand and I can skip to the next chapter easily to get through some of the stuff that just doesn't hold up and actually wasn't even good at the time it was released.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point and brings us right into it. So, listeners, just like with Spider-Man 1, if for some reason you have never watched Spider-Man 2 and you do not want to be spoiled by what Rob and I are going to be discussing, this is where you pause this one. Go check this movie out. You can watch this on Hulu with a premium subscription, or for some reason, if you were shopping Black Friday deals, this movie was on sale. So here's where we're going to get into spoilers. And Rob, it's popcorn time. So here at Matt Goes to the Movies, popcorn time, breaking down the movie, main characters, themes, relatable messages, our favorite parts of the movie, favorite character, and if we have a least favorite character in this movie, or really with talking about the trilogy as a whole here with Spider-Man 3 coming up, is there somebody who we don't like between both movies who's carried over? So, Spider-Man 2 follows a pretty, actually, I think, simple formula, but they do a great job. This movie takes place 2 years after Spider-Man 1, and Parker is now estranged from his love interest, Mary Jane, and his best friend, Harry, and discovers Aunt May is facing eviction. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But one of the things that I don't really like, and Rob, I want to start here to get your thoughts, is one of the main themes of this movie is Peter's struggle with being Spider-Man and it actually causing him to lose his powers. The reason why I want to start here is because, much like in Christopher Nolan's Batman series, I know it's been 2 years since Spider-Man 1. The events of that movie and this world that Raimi built. But I just feel like after everything that happened, and I felt like this in the Dark Knight trilogy, the amount of you know effort and the loss that the two characters went through, Batman and Spider-Man, and the amount of time that they had become these superhero personas, I just feel like not enough time has passed to warrant both of them like already being done with wanting to be Batman. I mean, in The Dark Knight, Bruce wants to give it up fairly quickly for Rachel. In this movie, Peter wants to give it up for Mary Jane. And I just don't feel, based on the journey that they went through to get to this point, that it's warranted that they already kind of want to give this up. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really obvious in The Dark Knight, like you were saying. In this one, I would have loved to have seen. This movie spends a lot of time, frustratingly so, focusing on how bad Peter's life sucks. And there's literally, I timed it, I want to say there's like 20 minutes before anything fun happens in this movie. And it's when he's doing his laundry in his Spidey suit, like the colors of it run into his other laundry. And it's the first time, 20 minutes in, that I'm actually having fun watching this movie. And it's just frustrating. Like, you don't enjoy it as an audience member seeing Peter Parker, Spider-Man, our hero. Like, his life sucks. It's awful. It's pretty terrible. And it's almost kind of like in Meet the Parents, like, it's those kind of movies are funny to a point where it's just like, how many more things can go wrong? Like, at some point, it's just not fun anymore to watch the main character or main characters get their butts handed to them. Like, it stops being fun at a point. Like, okay, come on, it's just frustrating now. Like, I'm being pulled out of the movie, and it's just hard to watch. And yes, if you would have given me a little bit of that, but then shown me him actually in action, and let's say he's taking his lumps and he's getting beat up, and he's struggling to even like get up the stairs or something like that. If you had shown me all of those things too, and actually given me some Spidey action, we don't really get Spidey action until way later in this movie. I think it would have been more believable.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I certainly don't mind a story where the hero has to overcome things, but again, I feel like they leaned a little bit too heavily on that in this movie. And some of the scenes watching him where there's one later on in the movie where he's walking down the street and the cops go whizzing by, and it's like, okay, he just sits there and stuffs his face with a hot dog and walks out. And I sit there and think, like, you did all of this and became Spider-Man, and Uncle Ben was shot and killed. And how much happened in between these 2 years after Green Goblin died. And it's just like, if you were there saving people in the city all of that time, like, what do you think is happening to those people now that you're not there for? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of times where there's things that happen where Spider-Man was the only one that could save them. So what is happening to those people now? And he's just like completely cool with it. I didn't quite buy it back then, and I still don't buy it now.
Well, especially when you really start think about all these people he's pulled out of burning buildings, which is apparently now a thing. Every Spider-Man movie, so far, you've got to pull people out of burning buildings. All of the different people whose lives he's saved. Think about even in the last movie, if you're thinking chronologically where he's at, he saved all of those people and all of those. I think it was some kind of Boy Scout troop that was in the gondola that was on the cable car or whatever it was. He saved all those lives. Like, he looked into their eyes and knew he was responsible for them being safe. Now, he's also technically responsible for them being in trouble in the first place. But, you think about all of the people that he's saved, and he's had people just sobbing, "Thank you, Spider-Man. Thank you. You saved my baby. You saved my cat," whatever. And he's just like, Parker out, deuces, just walks away from it. That's hard. That's when you really start thinking about it. It's hard to accept, which is kind of why I like the idea that they should have shown us something more about why he's deciding to do this. That it's he can't handle it, or just something more than just I'm sad. My life isn't fun. I like Mary Jane, but I can't tell her.
Yeah, I think it's almost a double-edged sword because we sit there and we don't want to see him get beat up too much, but then also because we're supposed to just be okay with the fact that it's been 2 years and his relationship with Harry isn't where it was, you don't get a lot of that. And maybe it would have been, more beneficial to see him, because he's Spider-Man, being drawn away from Harry because he didn't have time to be there for him after his father died. That maybe could have added more. But with that being said, one of the other main characters in this movie that has, I think, a really great arc is Harry Osborn's character, played by James Franco, who you see just like slowly but surely getting worse and worse and worse with his obsession with Spider-Man, trying to, run the Oscorp corporation now and being bigger and better than his father ever was. I think they really do nail Harry in this movie, to the point where, I think he almost takes over, as like a 1A character in this movie behind Spider-Man. I think he might, to me, be a little bit more relevant than Doc Ock, just in my opinion. I think they did a fantastic job.
In terms of what am I most intrigued by, like if you just, you stop this movie, you don't know anything about the third movie, you just kind of erase any memory you have of it. Who am I most interested in, or which character do I come away from this movie being most fascinated by? It's Harry.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't want to take anything away from Dr. Otto Octavius. I think he is really good in this movie, too. Again, a really, really good casting choice. I don't always necessarily buy the, his and Peter's relationship. Just, I don't know. I mean, I don't enjoy science, so I'm sorry. I don't really know that much. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the topic. So the whole fact that they just bond and like they develop this huge personal relationship over a very, very like brief sit down together.
It was over afternoon tea, really.
Yeah, I don't necessarily buy their dynamic in some of that ending scene where, you know, Peter is, I'm paraphrasing, saying, someone once told me we have to, put the things we want to the side, or, whatever he says to him. And you get another, kind of moderation of with great power comes great responsibility. I just never really bought that relationship. And I think it takes away a little bit from Doc Ock as the villain, because I don't think, watching it now, the relationship is as personal as I thought it was the first time seeing this movie.
You compare that to the recent Spider-Man game that released for PlayStation, where Peter worked for Otto. Like he was not just his mentor, but he was in some ways a father figure. They were close. That relationship was believable. And it made the ending of that game, I guess, mild spoilers if you haven't played it, which, by the way, go play that. Like, not like finish the episode and then like go play that if you haven't, because it's fantastic. It's probably the best representation of Spider-Man I think I can think of in terms of storytelling. It's so good. But that was a great representation of a relationship between Peter and Otto that I would believe, and you just don't earn that in this movie. They have tea and crumpets, and then all of a sudden, when Otto like regains his sanity at the end, he's like, "Oh, Peter's here, yeah. So yeah, it's the red switch. Like, go hit that." Like,
Right.
what?
Yeah. I think that I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, though, about Doc Ock. Sam Raimi directs this movie, and for anybody that knows Sam Raimi knows he has done Evil of the Dead and or Evil Dead, sorry. The scene where Octavius is in the hospital and they're trying
Oh yeah.
to surgically remove those arms. I mean, what a scene. It's shot like a horror movie. There's no gore, but it's all implied, and that's one of those ones where to me the implied violence is just as good as or better than what it would have been on screen. I think that was just a showcase of what Raimi is capable of, and one of the better scenes in the movie to me.
100%. And I knew that you were going to notice that on a rewatch. As much as you're into horror films and that's one of your favorite genres to talk about, I'm sitting there watching this going, this feels, I don't want to say it feels out of place for a comic book movie, but this feels like it belongs in like Halloween or something like that. It definitely feels like a textbook example of how to shoot horror. And it was really well done. Real quick, though, who has the lamer scream of the word no? Otto Octavius or Vader at the end of episode 3? Which one's lamer?
You know what? I think it has to be, for me, it has to be Vader because this was, Doc Ock's first appearance on screen. We didn't have a lot of, we didn't have 3 movies of Vader just being a complete badass. Even when he gets his redemption and saves Luke, we had him just being a badass, and then you get that Revenge of the Sith. No, so for me, that might take the top spot no matter what happens.
It's hard for me to imagine anything beats it, but it just kind of was one of those things that as I was watching this, it felt like it belonged.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, after that cringeworthy no with Doc Ock after the hospital scene, he starts to just become unraveled, and obviously he's one of the main characters. And the first real, fight that we get is that bank scene, and this is where I do want to commend the movie because, again, in this one, Spider-Man feels more like Spider-Man. He uses his webs more. He's more agile. I feel they did a much better job with the action here, making Spider-Man feel like he actually, had that agility and had the move set that we're used to seeing from video games or from the 90s or, cartoon or from the comic books. They definitely, I felt, put a bigger focus on Spider-Man fighting like the Spider-Man fans would be used to.
I 100% feel that way too. And it really stood out to me after something you had said about the first movie where he doesn't really move or fight like Spider-Man. In this movie, they really nail it. This is really where the movie starts to cook and starts to work really well. But there's some things that I just don't really understand. Like, why exactly are the arms evil? Like, so the inhibitor chip fries and all of a sudden the arms turn into evil Kermit where like, do this. No, do this. Why exactly?
Right.
What exactly about them makes them decide to be evil? Like that I don't really get. But think about it. Like we got 20 minutes into the movie before something really exciting, like really fun happens for me. 50 minutes into this movie is when we get our first real spider action. We're almost an hour into the movie. We're almost halfway into this movie before we get our first real Spider-Man action scene. And I think that's part of why this movie wasn't as well remembered for me and why it's hard for me to rank this towards the top of my Spider films. Cause that's not what we watch Spider-Man movies for.
Right. Right. Exactly. And, the one of the other things that I have a problem with in this movie is Okay, so specifically the scene, this is jumping ahead. The scene where Peter is talking to Mary Jane in that coffee shop, whatever it is, that might be the same place where Harry pulls his disappearing act in Spider-Man 3 where he winks at him over pie. But, you know, Octavius throws a car through the window. Now, what was his plan there? Like, why would you why would you throw the car through the window? Like, that really bothers me because to me, logically, it doesn't make sense. Like, did you know Peter Parker was in there? Because if so, why would you throw the car in there? Like, don't you think that would potentially kill him?
Well, I mean, it's not like he has these super powerful robot arms that he can just literally smash through windows and kind of just grab anybody he wants to and walk away with them. Oh wait, no, he does. He has those. Oh, well, crap. I guess it doesn't make sense.
Well, also too, like the way, like he doesn't know that Peter is Spider-Man. So when he grabs Peter Parker and is like, "Tell your friend to bring the tritium," or I can't remember the line, forgive me. He slams him into the brick wall, which forces it to crumble, which you think like any normal human being would be like paralyzed or knocked unconscious from that. And he just like he slams him into the brick and I'm like, again, what is going on? Like, what is this?
Not only that, but can we talk about how many times Peter Parker falls out of the sky and bounces off a couple of cars and just stands up and brushes himself off? Like, what part of having spider powers also gives you adamantium bones?
He's in my back. And it's like, it's a hysterical meme, but like in the context of the movie, oh my God, he falls like 30 feet.
Yeah, like none of that stuff makes sense. And I mean, we'll probably talk about the train scene too. But when he's slowing the train down, like his arms would be completely dislocated out of socket. Like there's no spider strength that's gonna stop that. Like his arms are broken. Like let's let's just call it what it is. Like that's pretty dumb. I actually really dislike that scene for a lot of reasons, but or at least that part of the scene. But I'll tell you, I really do like what they give us with Otto in that the actual fight scene on the train before they get to that part. It's really a high point for me, and I think if you imagine, like, think back to when you were a kid and you thought about what that would actually look like for those two to actually square off. Like if you got a chance to really see it instead of it just being animated or drawn on a page or it's on a video game. It's with action figures in your living room. I think they nailed it there. I really think they got almost perfect what that should look like. Obviously you can upgrade your CGI a little bit, using what we have today. Although thinking back to how bad the end of Black Panther looked, it actually could be about as good as it could get.
Right.
I'm still mystified about how bad that CG is. But anyways, I digress. That's like almost exactly what that should look like. And I love that.
Yeah, again, just the way that he fights in this movie is much more in line with what you would expect from Spider-Man. I think that, train scene is a great example. And, again, spider strength, you would think, again, his arms would just be dislocate, like he'd be dislocated. I do like the fact, after he stops the train and the people carry him back in. I really like that scene. I actually think that is very well done with them finding his mask. Like, although I don't know how they found that mask, just the way that it's taken off during that, whole ordeal. But the fact that they're willing to keep his secret because of everything that he's done for them and how he saved them there, although you would figure somebody's snitching
Well,
after a little while.
I couldn't watch this scene without thinking about it through the lens of imagine if that happens in 2021. Like there would be 400 Instagram selfies with hashtag real Spider-Man within seconds. There'd be
True.
20, there'd be 3 or 4 other kids that were like pushing each other out of the way to try to do TikTok dances with him in frame. Like, look what I found. It's the real Spider-Man, yo. Like,
by the way, he might be dead. Like,
yeah, you guys want to see a dead body? Like, here he is. Like, yeah, like that to me, I think was was just kind of funny to think about. I kind of want to move backwards just a little bit though to talk about what in the bank robbery when Otto's there. So he comes up with this plan that he's gonna finish his work and he's gonna need money to do it. So he just decides to go rob a bank. What exactly was he going to do with these cartoon sacks of money? Like, he's just going to pay $30,000 in cash for equipment. Like, just here, I'm just going to drop off a bag of money. Like, he just.
And where is he going to get those parts?
Right. Like, hi, Science Supply Depot. Like, will you be willing to sell to a terrorist with 8 arms if you do also accept payment in giant bags of cash and rolled coin? Like, is that unacceptable? No, you guys usually work in purchase orders. Oh, how about giant bags of cash? Do you take that? Like, where's your office that I can drop this off to? Like, okay, great. Send me my equipment. Like, how's that work?
It looked like they transferred the vault from Scrooge McDuck and DuckTales.
Yeah, like who pays with that? Like, no, it's all done with purchase orders and money transfers. Like, who is he buying this stuff from?
Yeah, no, that's like seriously. I always like laughed at that because I'm just like, oh, I need money. Okay, I'm gonna rob the bank. But yeah, like where necessarily are you going to buy these parts from? And if they tell you no, are you probably just stealing it? And also, I get that it's out like in the harbor, but nobody's recognized this 8-armed mechanical dude carrying giant supplies like, out to this abandoned building on the water. Like, New York's not that abandoned. Like,
listen,
so,
if the ATF can figure out who's growing pot in their house just by looking at the electrical bill, I think they could figure out where Otto was.
right, exactly. So, again, some of the logistical things in this movie just, I think when you go back, just do not add up at all. We talked about him flinging the car through the window and slamming Peter Parker into the brick. We just talked about the bank scene. It's just logistically a lot of things don't add up in this movie that, again, enjoyable, but to me, when you look back at it, go, oh, it's not as coherent as I remember.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the dialogue yet. You ready to get into it? Because
I'm
ready.
I am ready to get into that. I do want to make a quick point that I also feel like, because it starts in this movie, boy, you thought they were going somewhere with Mary Jane marrying Jameson's son and what that could have meant storyline wise. But boy, do they drop that, without any follow up at all in the third movie. And boy, once again, man, she's just, I don't even know if there's any reason to talk about her, because as bad as she was in this movie, and I'm sure you're going to talk about the dialogue, or in the first movie, boy, they didn't do her any favors in this one either. It's like they didn't. It's almost like they didn't want to cast her, and they got stuck with her, and were like, "Well, you are going to get the worst dialogue we can think of for your character."
Once again, MJ in this movie her character is entirely defined by her relationships to male characters and who she's in love with, who she's dating but not in love with because she's in love with somebody else. That's her whole arc. And it's sad. And it bothers me. I want to talk about one. So it's starting to yell about dialogue and hate on the dialogue while on the subject of MJ. They're in the cafe. And he tells her that he doesn't love her. He lies. He says, "I don't love you." And she's like, "Okay, great. Kiss me anyways."
Great.
What?
After what 30 minutes prior, him confessing, his love, and oh boy. But continue.
Yeah, like how terrible is that? Like you just said that you don't love me, but I'm going to ask you to kiss me anyways. Now, just for a second, Matt, let's reverse this. And let's have the male character do that to the female character, and let's see how fast that gets canceled. You can't have that. Like you can't have that. Like it's terrible writing. It's lazy screenwriting. It makes Mary Jane just not an interesting character. She's flatter than a pancake in terms of dimension. There's nothing to her, and it's so sad because if this is Peter's love interest, you don't feel anything at the end. I don't, at least, when they finally get together. And it almost, especially the ending, Peter, I can't survive without you. Based on what? Based on what? You guys aren't a thing.
You've
been a couple.
You've been doing a pretty good job. You found other boyfriends. You
like real quick too.
Right. Like you have been, you were with that guy long enough to get engaged. And then, based on the wedding. Yeah, right. Based on the ending, she runs off, runs to Peter, and then he's like, okay, like, I have to go be Spider-Man, which she says she's cool with, but then like her facial expression when he goes is just like, oh, I'm alone. I don't have a man with me. Woe is me. And it's like, oh boy. Like,
and I've always loved just thinking about, so we see the end credits sort of right as they're getting ready to roll. He's swinging through the city, and it's some pretty bad early aughts CG, but he's swinging through the city. And I've always just loved thinking about Mary Jane sitting in literally the crappiest apartment in all of New York in what is likely a $25,000-$30,000 designer wedding gown, and she's just hanging out on his like dirty sheets, and there's cockroaches around, and she's just like looking around, maybe for like a sweatshirt she could put on to borrow. It's like, just thinking about that always cracks me up. But it's like, this whole Peter, I can't survive without you. Like it's so frustrating because it's the same way that everybody misinterprets Romeo and Juliet as this great love story. And by the way, everybody, it's not. Yeah. She's 14. He's 16. They've known each other for about 4 seconds before they pledge each other for all eternity. They act like immature children to each other. They overact, they overreact to everything, and a lot of people die because of their immaturity. It's not a great love story. It's really not. But I digress. So let's talk about some other really bad dialogue. It starts very early on in this movie. Peter, tell us about yourself. Do you have a girlfriend? Who the hell starts a conversation like that? Like when he's having tea and Otto's wife is like, so tell us about yourself. Do you have a girlfriend? Who does that? Like, that's kind of a personal question. Right. It's like, who starts off a conversation that way?
Because I want to hook you up with somebody. Like, know, like, oh, geez. And who says back, I don't know? Like, you either have, like, you have one or you don't. Like, I don't know. Well, who should know? Shouldn't she know? What about you?
My Facebook status is it's complicated.
Right. Right. Oh, man. The fact that one of those even exists is the greatest thing ever.
Right. Because try explaining that to the person that it's complicated with. Like, what do you mean it's complicated?
Right.
God, I got married before I had a Facebook profile and had to worry about this crap.
Like, literally, if Spider-Man was on Facebook, that question would, Peter would just click it's complicated for his Facebook status. Like, oh my God. Like, and
so then,
go ahead.
You say we get later into the movie and Harry has the line, I'm ruined. I have nothing left but Spider-Man. He humiliated me by touching me. That's a direct quote. I said it flat because, it's actually said a lot better by James Franco because he's actually a good actor. But I said it as flat as I could because I wanted everyone to hear like how bad that piece of dialogue was written. Who the hell talks like this? He humiliated me by touching me. I have nothing left but Spider-Man.
I'm sure he's going to get a lot of tabloid questions about that. So Spider-Man touched you the other day. Do you feel like this has ruined you? Like,
Yeah. Show me on the clown where Spider-Man touched you. Like, come on.
and I'm ruined. Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think you're ruined because you're still in the mansion and you're still the CEO of Oscorp. Like, I think you're okay. And his what if can I just also add the whiny scene where he's like he literally stomps his feet like the kid that didn't get the toy at Toys R Us and is like, I'm in charge here, shut it down.
That's pretty awful.
Like, wow. And geez, what was the other scene that I was thinking of where I don't think the dialogue is all that. I think the scene is good, but again, like it's undercut by dialogue when he like actually confronts Peter at the party because he's drunk. He's like, "Are you taking pictures of your friend Spider-Man?" And it's like, I feel like you'd be a little bit more like aggressive and not so whiny about it.
Yeah, I think again, it goes to show like James Franco's pretty good actor. Like he was able to pull off and make all of that mostly believable with if you actually just look at the screenplay and look at the dialogue that he was asked to deliver and like you just imagine him outside his trailer smoking, like reading the script going, I have to say what? Oh, you got to be kidding me. Okay. Right. Work is work.
work is work.
Yeah. It's in some of the other, so the dialogue is bad, but there's other parts of the screenplay that I don't really love and I think are real tropey. So Matt, how many movies or TV shows or even cartoons, anything you can think of, how many times does the main action or the main conflict get set into motion because somebody's trying to invent something that will give all of us access to free energy? Like how many times have we seen that? At least 400 million, right?
Yeah, about as many times as a sky portal is the ending battle.
Yep, and we almost get a sky portal here, except it kind of just stayed contained. It was more of like just the orb. It didn't really turn into the portal, but I felt like it wanted to.
Right, and by the way, I do want to point out that Michael Bay did it first in Transformers: Dark of the Moon. So everything else that came after, I just want to point out they copied Michael Bay. Do with that information what you will.
Yeah, not exactly a great one to copy. In defense of some of the writing, the elevator scene is great.
It is good.
Where he's awkwardly riding the elevator because for no other way of putting it, like he lost his mojo. Like it literally reminds me of the second Austin Powers movie so much where it's the same plot really. Like the hero loses his mojo. He's trying to get the girl, but he doesn't have the ability to. He doesn't have his abilities. He doesn't have his powers. And then it's not till the end of the movie that he starts to believe in himself again and gets his powers back because feelings. I'm not really clear on that. But
right, exactly. If you believe in yourself, you can achieve it.
Yeah, it's literally every motivational poster from 7th grade gym class, like all rolled into a plot that's supposed to be about Spider-Man swinging through the city, punching bad guys and saying funny lines when he does it. And it's not how I would have written this movie if I was given the opportunity to do it, which no one asked me to, by the way. I'm just going to point that out. Like, nobody did ask me, but if they did, I would definitely not spend half of my movie with my marquee superhero for an entire comic book company not having the ability to kick ass, and he just kind of strolls through the city with raindrops keep falling on my head playing. Like that's not how I would have made that movie.
Yeah. One character that we haven't talked about, and I think he's equally as great, is J. Jonah Jameson.
Even better in this movie than the first one. I mean, even better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I love, too, how, not only does he have like funny scenes, but he also, has the serious scene where he's just like, I drove Spider-Man away. Again, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact dialogue. But he's like, we could have used him now if I hadn't driven him away. And, one of his, whatever you want to call him, his editors or, the guy in the glasses is like, he's the only one who could have stopped Octavius. And he just rolls his eyes and he's like, yep, that's true. Like he's so annoyed with him. And it's supposed to be like a serious scene, like, oh no, Spider-Man's gone. And then he just, he immediately turns it on when he turns around and he takes the suit off the wall. He's like, he's a menace. I knew it. Spider-Man. Like he flips the switch so quick. And yeah, he's better in the second than he was in the first. And he was amazing in the first.
Even the bit at the end where he cancels the caviar when the wedding is clearly over, like that just kills me because it's quintessential Jonah. It's at least the way they're interpreting him for us. And I gotta say, just seeing him in this makes me so giddy about what we might get in the next Tom Holland Spider-Man, knowing that that J.K. Simmons was at the end of the the middle Spider-Man movie of this trilogy, which, by the way, Matt, have you heard, I think the news broke today, that Sony and Marvel are in the process of setting up a new Spider trilogy starring Tom Holland. Like there's a new Spider-Man trilogy of films that have basically been greenlit and are going to be in production.
Yeah, I did hear that. I was literally reading that right after I got my tickets for No Way Home, which, talk about a kid that runs downstairs to see 100 presents like under the Christmas tree. Like when I hit get tickets and it went through, like I'm not even kidding. My body was like filled with emotion. Like, oh my God, I'm going to see it. The tough part is my tickets are not until 10:50 on Thursday night. So I am going to have to avoid everything and everybody because this so many people will have seen this movie by now. I'm sure it'll be all over the internet. So I am going to be in deep dark ages times in terms of phones and computers and everything else in between.
You're going to have to construct a Faraday cage around your house to keep all signals from getting in.
Right, exactly. So I will say that the one thing that I loved is one of his conditions to come back was actually they wanted him to not have the mustache anymore. And he said he would do the haircut, but he had to have the signature mustache. So I actually kind of really respect that he was so he was eager to come back and play the character, but he had a caveat to do it. And he said he still had to have that signature look. So I respect that.
Well, and it kind of makes you wonder, we know that with the third one, it's going multiversal in some way. We know that. I'm picturing a scene where possibly multiple spider people are talking to one another and they realize they have the same Jonah that they're dealing with. That would be really funny to me. That it's just that guy just pervades through the multiverse. I'm picturing something like that, and I think it'd be really funny. I'd love to see how they're going to make that work.
Seeing that would actually be a lot of fun. Hopefully we get enough of him. Again, there's so much going on with this movie and what could and could not happen. It's going to be a pretty tough balancing act, I think. So I'll be interested to see how much screen time he actually gets and what it means for him going forward, especially, like you said, given the announcement that there is another trilogy that they will be doing. How much will he be involved going forward with these new Spider-Man movies?
And how much will other Sony properties, for example, like Morbius, seeing Michael Keaton in the trailer, if you're not careful, you can start thinking some crazy things about what the next, No Way Home film is going to be about, like, and all of the ways they're going to pull stuff in. You could go a little nutty, and it'd be way bigger than what they could truly contain in one film. Because it really does look like they're going to go with at least an element of the really iconic story where he actually makes a deal with Mephisto to make everybody forget that he's Spider-Man. Brand New Day is the name of the storyline. It was escaping me for a second. And he makes this deal, and part of the deal is he and Mary Jane can't be together. And I don't know why that's part of the deal. Like, I don't really remember that aspect of why Mephisto says that they got to do that, but that's how everybody forgets, because he unmasks himself as part of the events of Civil War, and it's like this whole big thing. And there's a lot of fans who have really strong feelings about the undoing of that, or not. So yeah, I'm excited to see it, and I can't wait.
Yeah. So, Rob, who would you say? I mean, for me, I'll start this off. It's once again Mary Jane for me in this movie. She is my absolute least favorite character. She's held that spot between the first movie and the second movie. But for me, my favorite character in this movie is definitely Harry. Again, I think his arc is incredibly well done from the first movie to the second movie. His relationship with Peter, and how, you know, when Octavius brings Spider-Man to Harry and he pulls off the mask, like, the sheer look of betrayal, hurt, sadness, like everything, confusion, he portrays that so well. And just, again, the look on his face when he says, Peter, you killed my father, then you can see, like, his eyes are welled up. And we've said a lot of things about the dialogue, but man, that line back from Toby with, there are bigger things happening here than you and me. Like, boy, you talk about a scene that works in this movie. That is one of them. But for me, it definitely is Harry in this movie, where he is my favorite character.
I'm not going to disagree with any of that. MJ's still my least favorite character, and it's really sad. Harry, very, very well written. I do have some minor issues with this scene that you're talking about in particular. He's all wrapped up in the barbed wire, and as soon as he pulls the mask off, Peter just kind of jumps up and just kind of like takes in a big breath and pops the wire off. Like, why didn't you do that sooner? Like, I would have loved to have seen him have to wake up a little bit to explain that, because it seems like he could have just done that anytime he wanted to. And there's a lot of tropes in film that I hate. And one of the ones we discussed recently was the "We're not so different, you and I," and I hate that one, and it appears all the time. One of the other ones that I hate that appears almost as frequently, and it's just lazy screenwriting, is scenes where conflict is introduced for the sake of conflict that could literally just be cleaned up in about 45 seconds of normal human communication. Like, Harry, listen, I didn't want to have to tell you this. I was trying to protect you. Your dad was the Green Goblin. Something happened. He took the formula, whatever. He killed, he was killed during a battle. I didn't actually kill him. His glider killed him. I didn't want to tell you that was the case. I was trying to protect you. Now, how long did that take? That was probably less than 45 seconds.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they're still going to have some stuff to work out. And I like his line, Harry, there's bigger things at work than you and I right now. I like what he's got going on there, but I really feel like there's really no reason. I don't want to say no reason. There shouldn't be the level of tension that still exists. There's a very simple way to at least begin the explanation that allows them the opportunity to work on some things, and they can still retain a friendship moving forward. Especially with now the fact that Harry knows his secret.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a very, very good point. What is, with everything, being said there, what would you say is your actual favorite scene from this movie?
Favorite scene is definitely when we get Octavius and Spider-Man actually fighting, like really fighting for the first time, and it goes out onto the train, and there's creative use of Octopus's arms. Peter swings. We still don't really get the humor of the character fully. I mean, sometimes the guy doesn't shut up, ever, in certain interpretations of the character, in certain ways that we've seen him. And I kind of miss that from the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi series. But I think it was such a great, because Dr. Octopus is definitely, like, if you talk about the iconic Spider-Man villains, everybody's going to go to Venom, I think, probably right away, Venom and Carnage. But Dr. Octopus is absolutely right up there. And this was a great scene. First time we've seen those characters on camera together, and it worked really well.
Yeah, I think that is, for me, that's the obvious choice in this movie. Is the probably the scene that everybody talks about. Certainly, when you type in Spider-Man 2, like one of the first clips that pops up for YouTube or anything else is the train scene. I think that's a really easy choice, but also, the logical and the right choice for this movie. I think it represents a lot of what Spider-Man is supposed to be, and it was very, very well done. So, let's move on here to roll credits, where we talk about interesting facts about the film, some box office, some behind the scenes. We also get into the overall rating system, simple rating system, 1 through 5. How do we feel about the movie? But, Rob, we talked about Spider-Man 1, where it broke so many box office records and held them for so long. And one of the things that I actually find really surprising about this movie is, Rob, regardless of our personal opinions, people that you talk to or things that you read, this movie is widely regarded as the best Spider-Man film. Would you not agree? Like, based on everything that you see?
Of this original trilogy, I think a lot of people are starting to get into the Tom Holland series and find a lot more fun in that. But there's definitely people that look at this one as their favorite of the original trilogy.
And that was for a very, very long time, and it was talked about more than Spider-Man 1. It had, better critical reception than Spider-Man 1, even though Spider-Man 1's critical reception was very good. But what I find incredibly odd about that is, with all of that happening, this movie did $788.6 million versus Spider-Man 1's $821 million. I've always find that odd that the movie out of this trilogy that people consider the best still did less than what the first movie did. And, this wasn't a time when the box office was super expensive, or, we certainly didn't have the pandemic and the coronavirus like we do now. So it's not like people weren't going to the theaters, but I've always been surprised that this movie did not pass Spider-Man 1 at the box office.
I wonder if there was anything else that opened that same weekend or was kind of running all at the same time that inhibited it.
I do, if I recall, I think, it held it held the single day record for Wednesday for 3 years until Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. It did break the opening day record of it made $40.4 million for its opening day, beating Spider-Man 1. I do believe actually Pirates of the Caribbean, the second one, was coming out when this one did as well.
You think how groundbreaking the original Spider-Man film was, and how long it had been, the original X-Men film notwithstanding, since we got a good superhero movie on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that the first one was good and people enjoyed it created a buzz that it's hard to capture that buzz again.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'm trying to think. I'm actually trying to look this up to see if it Wednesday, a year later, Star Wars Episode 3 came out. Interesting. Yeah, no, I don't see anything that really came out during this time frame that would have done that. So yeah, maybe it was just the fact that Spider-Man 1 was so groundbreaking at the time, and it's hard to follow up even with a better movie. But one thing that also is really interesting to me, there's two things. One, Dr. Octopus was actually supposed to be in the first movie, and they'd even storyboarded things for him and had his design already set up. And he was supposed to be with Green Goblin, but they thought it would take away from the overall story that they were trying to tell in the first movie. But they loved the design and what they wanted to do with the character so much that's why he was the villain of the second movie. But he was originally supposed to be in the first movie as a second villain with Green Goblin.
And I'll tell you, one of the things I like about this movie is they didn't fall into the trap that we see in so many superhero films that get a sequel, where they throw two villains at you now. We see it time and time again. It happens all the time. And it's a lazy way of upping the stakes. So, okay, you put your first film out, and now for the second film, we have to raise the stakes somehow. Okay, well, what can we do? Well, let's put two villains against him. Okay, and we see it happen all the time, and it's become its own trope. And I'm glad that they gave Dr. Octopus and Alfred Molina as well the opportunity to just portray his character and tell that story. And tell that relationship the way that they did, without having to introduce a second character that never really gets fleshed out fully, and has to almost be a little more cartoony in the way that happens. And it just, you see it all the time. Can you really think of a film that had two main villains that really worked well? There's people who like Batman Forever. It's not terrible. It's certainly not the worst Batman movie I've ever seen, and it's certainly not the worst movie with Batman in it that I've ever seen. But other than that, I'm struggling to think of. In Batman Returns, do you really think Catwoman's a villain? Kind of, sort of, not really. I'm just trying to think of a film with two villains in it that actually really works.
Right? Yeah. No.
Is there something obvious I'm missing?
The only one I can think of is
The Dark Knight. There's two villains in that, if you consider kind of Two-Face's turn to the dark side at the end. But
right. Could you consider
that's a slow progression?
Could you consider X2? Magneto still is bad, but realistically, it's only at the end. He never really has to fight the X-Men. It's mostly their fight against Stryker. So I don't think you could consider X2.
Yeah, listeners, throw something in the comments if there's one we're missing. Tell us in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing behind the scenes that I have, Rob, that there's never been exact confirmation. People have tiptoed around it, but there's certainly plenty of evidence to show that it was very close, that Tobey Maguire was almost replaced in this movie. He said that he had a back injury and he couldn't film. They thought he was using it as leverage to get a bigger contract, to the point where, according to a lot of sources at the time and even things now, they actually met with Jake Gyllenhaal to actually replace Tobey Maguire in this movie before it started filming.
So you had listed off some actors that were considered to play some of the roles for the first one, and I didn't really see any of those, I don't think, working well. I could see Jake Gyllenhaal as Peter Parker at the age that he would have been at the time. I could have actually seen that. I think it would have worked.
Yeah, so again, I've never seen direct confirmation that it is, but there's certainly a lot of things that point to they did meet with Jake Gyllenhaal right before this movie started filming. Certainly leads there, and eventually Jake Gyllenhaal ended up in a Spider-Man movie with his portrayal of Mysterio. So everything
all comes full circle,
right? It all worked out, but it does make you pause and think, like, what if Tobey Maguire would have been recast? Would Spider-Man 3 have turned out differently? Would, you know, what could have been if that actually had to happen, but it didn't. I think for all parties involved, it worked out very well. Um, but I always found that interesting that they thought it was a leverage tool to try and get more money, but he, was stating that he just wasn't physically able to shoot at the time.
Yeah, because you know what? I almost think I heard something about this. What was it when he was filming Seabiscuit? Was that what caused it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's one of those things it'll be a great oral history, to read someday if they ever publish that one, because there's always going to be conflicting stories and people will misremember things. But that would be interesting to find out some of those details.
Yeah. So, Rob, anything else that you have like interesting facts about the film or anything like that?
I kind of want to talk about the opening and closing credits for just 2 seconds. I really love the opening credits of this movie with how they kind of give you the plot points of the first film, but it's done in a realistic comic book setting though. Like
Yes.
the characters look like the actors that portray them. I kind of love that. So I just finished the first movie like 2 days ago, so it was fresh in my mind. But if you haven't seen the first movie in a while and you wanted to turn this one on, I think it's a great way to kind of catch everybody up to what's going on. I really thought the opening was really, really cool. And then the end credits, I completely forgot that there exists a Michael Bublé version of the Spider-Man theme.
Yeah.
I did not remember that existed. And now that is my gift to you, the listener, is that's out there. If you want to enjoy that, you can have it.
Well, there you go. A great way to end the facts segment. And it'll move us into the rating system. 1 to 5. How does this movie rate? Now, for listeners, I'll do a quick recap. Rob, you rated the first Spider-Man 3.75 out of 5, and I gave it an even 4. I'll ask the same question we asked last time. Did you have an idea in your head of where this movie would rate? And after your rewatch, did it change?
Yes and yes. So the first Spider-Man film I thought was going to be higher than what it actually came out on my recent rewatch. I thought this film would be lower than where it came out for me on my rewatch that I finished earlier tonight. I remembered how boring the middle part of this movie was to me, where he loses his mojo and he doesn't have powers and he's a regular guy, and they spent a lot of time telling that part of the story, and just the frustration of him getting his butt kicked at the beginning of the movie, and then just the awkwardness between him and MJ. Just it never really feels like it worked to me. Like I remembered all of those things for some reason and didn't remember how many other things of this movie actually really do work. So kind of in my head, I had this as a 3 coming into it. On my most recent rewatch, I now have it as a 3.5.
All right. Well, I remember this movie, at least I thought I did, very vividly. And when I first saw it, I definitely had this movie at a 5. I was like, oh my God, this is so great. It improves on everything the first one did in a major way. And then rewatching, I was like, okay, it improves on what the first one did, but it also has some of the same problems that the first one did. So I have Spider-Man 1 and 2, both rated at a 4, even though there's different reasons for that. I still have them ranked at the same overall in terms of how I feel they are as a film overall. I feel the first one does some things better in terms of the storytelling. I feel the second one does some things better, especially in terms of the fight sequences in this movie are much more in line than compared to Spider-Man 1. But I also give this one a 4, just like the original.
I think that's one of those things. Like you can talk about movies with people whose opinions you trust, and you could be like, yeah, I don't really see that, but I'm not sure where like, for example, anybody who thinks that The Last Jedi is watchable is like, I just don't understand that. But I think
There's
this is
nobody
one of
there's
those.
nobody out there like that.
I just can't imagine who that would be. Sociopaths, Matt. That's who likes The Last Jedi. Sociopaths only. Um, it's been a while since we've worked a Last Jedi reference in. I'm glad that we got to that. I think this is one of those ones that if you tell me you really like this movie, I get it. I get it. If you tell me you really dislike this movie, I you know I get parts of it, but I think there's enough here to like where I don't really understand fully if you tell me you don't like this movie. So if somebody told me they liked it as a 5, I would kind of have some questions about a 5, I think. But if I have it as a 3.5, you have it a 4, I go, yeah, I can see why somebody would grade this movie as a 4 reels kind of movie.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some wiggle room there to sit there and say, yeah, definitely. Like you said, like if somebody was like, "No, this movie's like garbage," I'd be like, "Oh, well, I really have to hear that because I like that. I just don't get, but I would love to hear your reasoning behind it." If somebody was like, "Oh, this is," because I have heard that, and I really would. If any listener here like actually has this as the greatest like comic book movie ever, because I have heard that argument, I would love to hear your side of that. Interact with the show's social media pages. You can email the show because I have heard that, but I would love to hear why this movie resonates so well with you. Because that's just one of the fascinating things about doing this show is just hearing all the different opinions. So,
and by the way, it's judgment free. So if you want to contribute, if you want to submit your idea, it's judgment free. Like you don't have to defend it. Like if you really like this movie, okay, great. Tell us why. I think Matt, we definitely saw this with some of the Star Wars rankings. We saw some people like, yeah, this is my ranking. Like, don't jump on me.
mm-hmm.
We definitely saw where people said that, and it kind of, I don't know. It makes me sad that fandom has kind of turned into that a little bit in different dark corners of the web. So yeah, if you really like this movie, if one of us is way off in an opinion about this movie or any movie that you've heard being reviewed on the Matt Goes to the Movies channel, submit your opinion. Send an email, mgttmpodcast@gmail.com. Or certainly comment on any of the posts on any of the social media channels and tell us if you agree or disagree, and you will not be mocked for your opinions.
Yeah, speaking of commenting, I was just able to actually give away. Prior, I was able to give away copies of Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins. That was really cool. I also just recently gave a digital download copy away of Venom to Westward Media from Instagram. So that was really cool as well. So I still have digital download codes that I am giving away to listeners who are interacting and leaving reviews for the show. So I still have as digital downloads Howard the Duck. I have Altia Battle Angel. I have Tenet. I still have a digital copy of Snake Eyes and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So, listeners, if you're interested in any of those, that will still be in the show notes. Comment, leave a review, and it will make you eligible for one of those digital downloads. It's one of the cool things that I have been able to start doing with the podcast is to kind of give something to listeners that have, interacted with the show. So continue to do so.
So somebody pick Howard the Duck and then let us know how it is. Like, let us know your honest thoughts.
I bought Howard the Duck in 4K because it was released in 4K. So it is one of the worst and best things I have ever watched in my life.
So if listeners want to have a rough idea of what the Matt Goes to the Movies studio looks like, it's every DVD and Blu-ray you can imagine. But honestly, at the end of this film that we're talking about now, when Harry walks into where all the goblin stuff is, and all of the goblin bombs are like meticulously set up. Like they're all at the same angle. They're all equidistant apart. Like they're literally, somebody got out a protractor and a laser level when they were setting those things up. Like who has time to do that when they're an evil supervillain? Like honestly, like who does that? But that's how Matt's action figures look, like set up at the Matt Goes to the Movies studio. Like it's Funko Pops, it's bobbleheads, it's action figures that are all set up with that kind of precision.
It really isn't. I literally just redid them.
So it's those and DVDs of everything and Blu-rays of everything you can imagine.
Yeah. I went on a spree too with Black Friday on 4K ones because there were a ton of movies that were on sale for $9.99 in 4K, and I could not help myself.
Howard the Duck being one of them.
Yes, Howard the Duck being one of them. So, oh man. But, listeners, thanks for tuning in today. I want to take a second here before we close out the show. Again, to thank Rob. I want to give a shout out to Harrison. We talked before we were able to record this episode. He was not able to make it for Spider-Man 2. We are hoping, we know we'll get him for at least a couple episodes. Harrison from the Basement Binge, you guys are, familiar with him. But Rob, again, I stated it. This was it's too big of an undertaking to do the whole thing by myself. So it's been a blast so far, the first 2 episodes. And I, maybe a little foreshadowing, but I look forward to probably laughing a lot with Spider-Man 3.
Oh boy. If somebody open a window, I think this movie stinks.
Yep. So, Rob, last episode you were able to talk about the extended universe, and I'd love for you to plug that one more time because, as I was kind of sitting around the house today and really not doing anything, I had the day off from work, so I took this to just kind of be lazy. I was going through the playlist from the extended universe, and man, that idea is just so cool. I'd really like you to just talk about that because those episodes that you've done, again, have been really popular on the show. So I'd love for you to plug that again.
Sure. Well, thank you. So you and I had the opportunity to join our friend Harrison on his show, The Basement Binge. I think we were talking about when he was doing his Fast and Furious binge series, which quick plug for his show. He just finished up Nolan November. And if you haven't checked out any of his stuff yet, I certainly encourage you to do so. His episode he did on The Dark Knight, it's one of my favorite movies. And it's definitely one of my favorite episodes of his show that he's done. He's got some really good behind the scenes details. He put a lot of effort into that one, and it is a lot of fun to listen to, and I really appreciated it. But he'd kind of asked a question around why do you love movies, and so I gave him my answer, and then I kind of thought about it for a while and just kind of came up with this idea that I really wanted to get into some of the movies that have really left long-lasting impacts on my life, and obviously my brother and I share a lot of those same movies that have had that impact on us. So I thought for sure it'd be a great time to talk about those on air with him. And we picked 4 so far. He's got a list. Like every couple of days, we'll text each other another idea of one, and he's the keeper of the list. So we were afraid we'd run out of stuff, and then all of a sudden we realized, oh no, there are a lot of movies that have left like a long-lasting impact or something that I find myself thinking about, big quotable lines from. So we started with Fight Club. We went to Goodfellas. We did The Big Lebowski, and then most recently Gone in 60 Seconds. And one of the themes that kind of kept coming up, obviously iconic lines are important to iconic films, but the use of music throughout was something that, we've both been really touched by. And we came up with this idea definitely for Gone in 60 Seconds. It works really well, but we call it Eric's EPU extended playlist. And what Eric's done is he's curated some really cool playlists based on each of the 4 films that we've reviewed on the EPU. It's the Extended Podcast Universe. And the one he did for Gone in 60 Seconds it's just full of great jams, just start to finish, great stuff. if you're running late to work, this is a good one to throw on because you'll get there faster than you thought you could. It's a lot of early 2000s like Crystal Method and Moby and like that kind of sound, and Red Meth are on there from the Wu-Tang Clan. But it's stuff that's curated, the best songs from the film itself. It's not just the soundtrack, so it's the best stuff from the films, as well as some other songs that fit the theme of the movie or just really fit in well with the kinds of songs that you'd find. So he's gone back and made one for all four of them. You can search on Spotify for MGTTM EPU. There's 4 different playlists. There's Eleanor. There's this I Am Jack's playlist is the one he did for Fight Club, which is the only way you could have gone. White Russian, and Go Get Your Shine Box. So check those out, and you can rock out with some music. The one thing I will tell you for sure is when you really start listening to these playlists, the one thing that it will absolutely do to you is it will really make you want to go watch the movie that it's based on, because it just brings you right back to it.
Yeah, no, 100%. That playlist idea was so cool. Definitely has some amazing tracks on there. So, and again, the show has been, those movies that you've covered have been super popular on the show. People have really taken to them, downloaded and, checked those out. So I really do look forward to the next time you're able to, get together and record another episode, because it's been extremely popular. So, listeners, as far as this episode goes here, we're closing out. It's been an absolute blast. Coming up next will be Spider-Man 3, which I really look forward to, because that one has been a very long time since I've seen that one. Obviously,
well, why, Matt? Why don't you watch that more often?
Yeah. Well, that'll be a discussion for next time, because I'm going to be insanely curious to see what my thoughts are on this movie, having fresh eyes on it, because it's not good. I'll let you know that as we're signing off here. But again,
spoiler alert, we don't like this movie.
Yeah. I doubt it's going to change, but stranger things have happened. So, listeners, I look forward to coming back here. I know Rob will be a part of Spider-Man 3. We're hoping Harrison, with his busy schedule, will be able to be a part of that one from the Basement Binge. But in the meantime, head over to the Facebook page, Instagram, TikTok, leave your comments. Certainly, leave your comments in this episode show notes. Don't forget to, reply, get a digital copy in the meantime from Matt Goes to the Movies. And thank you so much for listening.